ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरि ओम। So day before yesterday we ended the study of the introduction to his commentary on Brahma Sutras of Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya Deva, also called Adhyasa Bhashya. So, a commentary on Adhyasa or superimposition. So we saw that day before yesterday. Now we will just recapitulate what has been discussed in the Brahma Sutras Adhyasa Bhashya. So the Brahma Sutra starts with this sutra, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now there will be an inquiry on Brahman. Now if there has to be an inquiry on Brahman or anything, first there has to be a need to know something. And that need to know something has to arise because there is ignorance about that particular thing. If you already know something, then there is no need for again knowing it. So need for knowing something, anything, inquiry arises only when, to begin with, you don't know that thing. So Shankaracharya is trying to prove that we don't know Brahman. In our natural dealings, Naisargika Loka Vyavaharaha, we are unaware of the existence of Brahman. And why does this happen? Because of confusion, or you can say doubt. What is the confusion? And so confusion is, as I was telling day before yesterday, Shankaracharya does not try to prove that there is Adhyasa. Means he is not trying to prove that Adhyasa is real. He is saying that though there is Adhyasa, that is not real. So he is not Adhyasavadi or Mayavadi or Ajnanavadi as he is sometimes told to be. There is this criticism about Shankaracharya that he is a Mayavadi. Now, he is not a Mayavadi because he is not advocating the reality of Adhyasa. He is advocating the reality of Brahman. But he is saying that Adhyasa is there. So it is not like telling Delhi is there, Mumbai is also there, Kolkata is also there, Chennai is also there. It is not like that. Adhyasa is there, but Adhyasa has no reality. That is why Shankaracharya carefully says in the Adhyasa Bhashya that even when you are seeing something or experiencing something because of Adhyasa or Ajnana, in truth, nothing happens to that particular thing which you are experiencing. In our classical example, if you see snake in rope because of Adhyasa, in reality, the snake is not turning into rope, or the rope is not turning into snake. Ittaretara Adhyasa, mutual superimposition, though it is experienced, actually nothing is happening there. Rope is rope, snake is snake somewhere else. You are bringing that snake and superimposing on rope, though it is what you are experiencing, actually nothing of that sort is happening, even when you are experiencing. So even when we are experiencing this universe is not happening. That is the point Shankaracharya is stressing. So nothing actually changes here. And so also going by the logic, what is the purpose of studying Brahma Sutra? Like last day before yesterday, last discussion we saw, that because of this superimposition, we are wrongly getting the idea of agency, or I am the doer, doership. And we are also getting the idea of being an experiencer, experiencership. So we are kartrutva, the idea of being the doer. We're also getting the idea of being an experiencer. These ideas are coming. Why? Because of adhyasa, because of superimposition. And because of these ideas or these notions, we get suffering, we get misery. And this is the cause of all anartha. Sarva anartha hetu, Shankaracharya says. This is the cause of all anartha or all misery, all troubles, all danger. And the goal of Brahma Sutra is to understand that there is no adhyasa. To remove this adhyasa, to remove the ajnana or ignorance or maya or avidya. The goal of the study of Brahma Sutra is to remove these things, that particular illusion which is called by these names. And because of the removal or on the removal of adhyasa, automatically the sense of agency or the sense of experiencership or the sense of doership and enjoyership will be removed. And automatically a person will understand that that person is Brahman. And the identity of Atman and Brahman will be established. That is another purpose of studying Brahma Sutra. Atma Ekatva Vidya, the knowledge of the unity of Atman and Brahman. So that also we will understand. So the adhyasa, the superimposition which leads to the ideas of doership and experiencership, that we will understand to be wrong. And so that adhyasa will go away. And because of that adhyasa going away, this sense of kartrutva and bhoktrutva will also go away. They will also go away. And we will get the knowledge of the unity or identity of Atman and Brahman. This is why Shankaracharya is investing so much time in proving adhyasa. And as we took an example from medicine, only if the doctor or the physician understands what is the problem, can a line of treatment be formulated. If there is no diagnosis of the problem, there can be no prognosis, or the treatment cannot be possible. So here also Shankaracharya takes that route. And that is why he is establishing adhyasa. One thing we have to understand, that most of us are unaware that we have a problem. Sri Ramakrishna in his examples or in his stories beautifully explains this over and again. For example, he gives the story of how a fisherman throws a net. And there are different types of fishes. One kind of fish, what it does, it is caught in the net. But along with the net which goes to the bank of the river, this fish also goes and sits on the bank and thinks, oh, nothing is wrong. Everything is all right with us. What is the big deal? Nothing is wrong. Why should we bother? We are all happy. So though caught in the net, it is seated on the river bed and it is thinking it is happy, that fish or the group of fishes, shoal of fishes. So once the fisherman comes and catches it or lifts the net, pulls the net, they all die. The same argument is found among us. It's very common to hear. Why are we bothering? If there is life, there will be some misery, there will be some happiness. That is what life is. Why should we bother about this? So, Swamiji, why are you saying all this? Ordinary people like us. So, I don't know why, but whenever somebody talks with a monk, they always make this distinction. Normal people like us, ordinary people like us. So, thereby telling that monks are no way ordinary or normal. They are not normal, abnormal, and they are not ordinary. I don't know whether they are hinting they are extraordinary. They are only saying that you are not even ordinary. We will not even consider. Anyway, so we are normal people like this. And so we find that in our life, there will be some happiness, some misery. Why are we bothering about all this adhyasa, avidya and all that? What is avidya? There is no avidya. There is no adhyasa. Life is like that. That is what life is. When and there are so many examples are also given. If you eat, there will be something sour, there will be something sweet, there will be something hot. So life is like that. Little spice, little sweet, little hot, little sour. So why are you bothering your head? This is what, by the grace of God we live. Now even people who say that by the grace of God we live, the question is, and one has to be very honest in answering this question. Throughout the day or even in a week, how many times do we really acknowledge the fact that everything is happening because of God's will? How many times do we really, are we aware of what is happening is because of God's will? So to just give a lip service to the fact that everything is happening because of God's will, that is hypocrisy, to say the least. So there is a problem, and that problem has to be first acknowledged. And this problem is called a problem. As we see, suddenly Shankaracharya goes and refers to various philosophical schools or religious schools and how they address khyati. Khyati means wrong knowledge, false knowledge or illusion. So why does he do that? Because he wants to emphasize the fact that there is no controversy or there is no difference of opinion regarding the fact that there exists illusion. Everybody agrees on this. The only people who don't agree are Charvakas. And Charvakas are not old, some school of thought which has died. Charvakas are the majority of people today. Materialists. They say, you see, science shows us that for everything there is a cause, and because of cause everything is happening, etc. Now people who boast of so much science also, if you ask how this universe came into existence, after a point they simply keep quiet. So they challenge the theories made by religious groups or even religious philosophies, if I can use such an expression. They challenge those theories and they say, how can suddenly out of nowhere the universe can come? But if you ask any cosmologist, physicist, cosmologist who talks about the source of universe, they also very much practically say the same thing. Only the words change, phrases change. Here God created, they say it is Big Bang theory. Suddenly one Big Bang came. From where did this Big Bang come? Nobody has any answer. So essentially, avidya or this universe, the manifested universe, has no beginning. Even science has not been able to find any beginning. And the very question has been put to rest that, okay, if we find the beginning, how is it going to help us? So ajnana, avidya, maya, adhyasa has no beginning. These things, or the thing which have these names, which has these names, it has no beginning. But everyone accepts it, as I said, excepting Charvaka or materialists who don't even believe that there is a possibility to transcend the human condition or any living condition. I am embodied. I am caught in the body and mind. That is what a person who thinks that there is a status or a being which is beyond this body, mind, intellect, and ananda, prana, etc. There is a status, or there is a kind of a state which we truly belong to. This kind of a thinking is there. Only that person wants to go beyond the body, or body, mind, or prana. But people who are materialists, they say that there is nothing beyond that. There is only, see, there was this famous one incident happened in one university in India. A professor was teaching postmodernism in Western philosophy. It's called postmodernism. So in that class, there was a student who was also studying. He was actually taking a course on Vedanta, and postmodernism was an elective course for that student. So he raised his hand and said, "But sir, I have a question." So the professor asked, "Okay, shoot, what is the question you have?" And he said, "But sir, what about the underlying reality? Because in Vedanta, Brahman is the underlying reality." Immediately, this professor looked under his table and see why I don't see any underlying reality. See, that is how. So there is no reality. According to materialists, there is no reality. Whatever is there. And so if you die, that's the end of it. What are you talking about rebirth and all that? So if you talk about rebirth and all, they will say, "Oh, there's something wrong in this person's brain. There is something wrong in this person's mental makeup." Because of Corona, many people have been unable to do makeup. That's a different thing. So this mental makeup of this person is wrong. So it is all, it's a mental aberration. And that is why this person has started hallucinating, thinking that there is a state or an existence beyond this body. So most people will not agree. Even people who, for various reasons, traditional or conventional reasons, somehow believe that there is some state. Many times I ask this question, particularly to Indians, of course. You are talking about Atman. Put yourselves in the shoes of an American or a European. And I ask you the question, would you have talked about Atman if you were not born in a family in India? Is it not something which has been injected into you culturally? So all this talk of Atman and Brahman, how much is this a talk which is culturally induced? Have you really understood that? Because this person will talk. Only today I was studying one of the lectures given by the 13th president of Ramakrishna Math and Ramakrishna Mission, Swami Ranganathananji. And he says in the Upanishads, the message is that one divine principle, that one truth has become many. Eko devaha sarva bhuteshu, etc. It is told in the Shweta Sutra Upanishad. Similar message is there in several Upanishads. That is what Ranganathanji says, that one principle has become many. That is the message of the Upanishads. But that Upanishads, the very home of the Upanishads, we know that Upanishads, most of them were born in the Himalayas, we can say. India, Bharata, the place where these Upanishads were born, in reality, what are we doing? We are not going towards oneness. We are going towards separateness. Every state is saying that, no, we will not have any other language. We will have only our language. Our state language is the great. Then every state is saying other people, migrants should not come here, get out, get out. Thankfully, Kerala will never say that, because in Kozhikode, some people, whoever is Bengali speaking, if they come to Kozhikode, they will have no problem. It will be a seamless transition. Why? You go to any restaurant in Kerala, it is full of Bengalis working there. People serving food are also Bengalis. People preparing food are also Bengalis. In malls everywhere. So because of the wonderful work culture this state has, this is the thing. But most of the states, they are saying, even states like Maharashtra, Mumbai, they are saying, we don't want migrant workers, let them go away like that. So we see a rise in polarization. Everybody is polarized. Countries are being polarized, but more so in India. We are going towards separateness. This Swami Ranganathanji says, somewhere in 1970s, he says this, that India is becoming separate, this separate, that separate, this caste, that caste. Even in 2021, nothing has changed. Why does that happen? Because we are not even aware that it is possible that there is one truth. We are not even aware that it is possible that there is one tattva, one principle. We are not even aware of that. Why are we not aware? Because we are not aware because we think that the status quo is okay. If there has to be progress, or to take the context of Brahma Sutra, if there has to be an inquiry, why would be there an inquiry? If you go to a police station and some kind of a crime is reported there, then they will see, okay, who was caught on the scene? This person. Did he do the crime? Yes, he has done the crime. Okay, so it's an open and shut case. It's a simple case. There is no need of any inquiry. Just book him, file a case, put him in prison. Why? Because he has done the crime. But if somebody goes and says, no, he's being framed. He's being framed, not like a photographer frames, but actually he's being framed. So that is why we cannot say that this person is the culprit. We have to find the culprit, etc. If somebody says, what is the necessity? It is very simple. See, this is the evidence and this is how this person has been caught. So he is the culprit and finish. So there are so many cases in India and elsewhere also across the world, which have been wrongly judged. As there are so many people in Indian prisons who have not yet got the chance for trial. They have spent more time than their punishment in the prison, just waiting for trial. So, if we don't know that there is a necessity for inquiry, we will not conduct an inquiry. Only if there is a state or there is a chance of my having a state which is free from misery, will I even think of inquiring into that state. Brahman is my true nature. If I know, only when I know that, or when I know that there is a nature or there is a possibility of my being in a state which is not my true nature. There were this happened in one of our ashramas. There were some small kids had gone there, small children, and some 4 or 5 years age like that. Many years ago it happened, some 40, 50 years ago. So small children were talking. There were some girls and some boys were talking. And they were all talking and they were making fun or they were playing, whatever children do in those days, of course. Now children, most of them play on iPad. But those days, so what the children do, they were doing. So one Swami arrived at the scene and he looked at the children. He saw some girls are talking to some boys. And he went to the boys and the girls and said that, no, girls should not talk to boys, boys should not talk to girls, because brahmacharya you have to follow. You have to follow brahmacharya. So this is not to be done like that. So on the scene then arrived a senior Swami and he looked at this junior Swami and said, what are you doing? Then the junior Swami said, I am instilling in them the idea of brahmacharya. So the senior Swami said, okay, that I understand, but these people don't know what is the opposite of brahmacharya as yet. They have not yet understood that there is something opposite of brahmacharya. Only when they understood what is opposite of brahmacharya, this idea of brahmacharya will make any sense to them. Similarly, only when we understand that I am not in my true state, I am in my state which is not my true state. Atma, Anatma, says the Upanishads. So only if I understand that there is an Anatma state, which is not my true state, only then I will have a desire at least, or there will be a question, there will be an inquiry. Oh, so what is my true state? It's like a person who is brought up by adopted parents, who have adopted that child, and this child does not know. We have seen this too many times in Indian movies, Bollywood movies. Okay, so let us use all that wisdom now. So they don't know, this boy or the girl does not know that my parents are not my real parents. Suddenly it so happens that this boy or girl sees some photograph or something, such thing happens, which might not happen in real life. Anyway, that happens. And then in real life, and then the boy or girl asks, oh, so who are my parents? And the question comes, why? Because there is a doubt that these are not my parents. Only that question will come. Unless we doubt the truth of my nature as I perceive it now, only then the question will come that it is not my true nature. So that is why, to know whether what you have understood about any subject, whether you are convinced or not, or whether you have proper knowledge of the subject or not, there is what is called as audit. Audit means to hear. So it's a very old thing. It started from the Greeks or even before that. Even in old Indian schools or universities, this system was there, that a person will be called and 4 or 5 people will question that person, which is now called viva voce or something like that. So it's oral examination. They will question. Oral examination, not when the doctor asks you to open your mouth, but oral examination when there is viva, when you are asked to give answers to questions. And that happens why? Because whether you have understood the thing properly or not. The purpose of Nyaya Prasthana, Brahma Sutra, is that to understand whether you have understood properly or not. But even before that, there is this problem that whether you think that such an exercise has to be done, whether you think that you need to make your understanding firm or make your conviction firm. Because if you think that Brahman is something which you don't need to understand, because if your nature is, this is also a logic many people give. What is the logic? They say, you see, we are Brahman, we are Atman. No matter what you think of yourself, you are Atman and Brahman. Very good. So what is the necessity of doing all this controlling of the mind, etc.? Because you are anyway Atman, Brahman. Why are you wanting to control the mind? Not necessary. That logic, when people present you like so convinced, of course it is true. I am Atman or Brahman. Why should I control the mind? The point is that yes, you are Atman and Brahman, but do you realize that, or do you experience the state of being Atman and Brahman? That means, do you constantly think that you will be ever existent, Sat? Do you constantly think that you are ever conscious, Chit? And do you constantly think of yourself, or are you always in a blissful state, Ananda? So the only blissful state people now get into is by being high on drugs or something. So I went to an office for some work, and there one young woman, very young woman, she was always smiling like that, very smiling. And then constantly smiling. That particular person at the counter was scolding her, and she is looking at him and smiling. She is looking at the glass and smiling. And she was so much smiling. And then I thought, what has happened to this girl? Either she has got Brahmagyan or something. What has happened? I am maybe witnessing a new generation, millennial Siddha Purusha or something, I thought. Then I was so perplexed with this experience, because she is told, hey, you have filled the wrong form. And by her appearance and the way she was speaking, we could understand that she is a well-educated woman, young woman. So then she was sent to another counter. From there, she is going to another counter. All the while, she is smiling, like she is some Anandamaya something, some Ananda she is there. So I shared this experience with one person who was in college. So at that time itself, I was a little old. I did not understand what is happening. Immediately, that person told Swamiji, she might be high. I said, no high. We were all on sea level only. We were working. No, not that high. She might be high on drugs. So that is the only bliss we are experiencing. Are we experiencing bliss thinking or knowing ourselves to be Atman or Brahman? Satchit Ananda bliss. So we are not. If you are not experiencing that bliss, then how can you say that you are Atman or Brahman? That knowledge which you take, Atman and Brahman, is only a knowledge which is a parrot wisdom. Means you tell anything to a parrot, depending upon the species of the parrot, it will quickly catch or it will take some time, but it will catch eventually. And it will keep on repeating that same thing. So it is like that. You're just parroting what you have heard or you have read, but you have not experienced it. So as long as you have not experienced it, you have not understood the problem or you have not got the solution. So that is why it is very important to understand that there is a problem. And so that is why Shankaracharya gives so much space in explaining that there is superimposition. Because there is a problem. The status quo is not the reality. This is what we have to understand. Status quo is not reality. What is the status quo? You think yourself to be hurt when your hand is hurt. You think yourself to be hurt when your relative is hurt, when your spouse or when your child is hurt. You think yourself to change when your body changes. You think yourself to change when your mind changes. All this are proof enough to show that we consider ourselves not as the Atman or Brahman. We consider ourselves to be something other than Atman or Brahman. Atman does not have body. Atman does not have mind. Atman is not your spouse or child or relative. So there is the problem. And also the problem becomes so deep when you realize that the entire structure of this universe, the entire manner in which we function is based on this presupposition that you are ignorant. To put it in another manner, if you are not ignorant, you will not be able to transact in this world. You will not be able to function in this world. So some people will say, Swamiji, what will happen if I get Brahmagyana, Swamiji, like that? Many people have asked me this question. They're almost like asking, like, what will happen if I get terminal cancer? So what will happen if I get Brahmagyana? Then what will happen to me? I will go away. I will not be there. So why do you want to hold on to that puny me? Swami Vivekananda, while giving his lectures on Jnana Yoga in one place, says that people are afraid to give up their individuality. Like that, he makes a stress on that word. Why do you want to not give that individuality? What has this individuality brought to you other than misery? Even when you say that it is happiness, it is nothing but it is a pause on misery. That's all it is. So why do you think this individuality should remain? Because this individuality is a restricted individuality. That's what there is another story. One raindrop was falling on the ocean. And there was the other one raindrop. So they are talking, because Indian raindrops also, like Indians like to talk. So they're talking, hello, hi, how are you? Where do you work? I'm working in Cloud9. I was working. Oh, Cloud9, what is it? MNC company. Working in Cloud9. Now I'm working from home. That is my cloud only is my home. There I'm working. And so how much salary you get? Because Indians straight away get into, we don't waste any time. Straight away, how much salary do you get? I'm getting this salary. Now, where are you going? I'm going to the ocean. So the other fellow asks, hey, I'm going to the ocean. What will happen to me? I will die. So the first fellow said, why are you thinking like this? You will not die. You are a puny raindrop. You will become the ocean. You are not going to die. You are going to become bigger. You are going to become greater. You are going to become your true self. So that is why in the Upanishads it said, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. You become Brahman by knowing Brahman. Why? Because you are already Brahman. Only thing you did not know that. Just like a person does not know that one's great-grandfather was a great person and that person has written a will and it is lying down somewhere, and suddenly now somebody has got hold of that will. And then now Smriti suddenly gets this will and she's like, oh, I got so many billions of dollars. Means suddenly it happens. Windfall, it is called. because like wind, it will fall. So that one does not know. Similarly, if you don't know your true nature, that is a problem. And that problem has to be addressed. And that problem has to be addressed because there is no way in which that problem can either be understood or even expressed. No way in which the solution can also be expressed. Sri Ramakrishna very poignantly put it, the Brahman cannot be made, I don't know if there is any word in English which comes closer to the Indian words. So Brahman cannot be deified. That is the translation. But what Sri Ramakrishna says is, Brahman cannot be made uchishta. Uchishta means, suppose I eat and it has become, in Hindi we say jhuta. So it has become jhuta. Jhuta also means lie, but here it is not lie. It has become uchishta. So I eat something, from there I will not give to some other person. In some countries, they eat from the same plate. It is not the tradition generally in India. So you eat and then you say, oh, now it has become uchishta. I have already eaten. I cannot give. So Brahman is, it never becomes uchishta because the words which you pronounce do not mean anything. They don't signify the experience of the knowledge of Brahman. So the solution, that is the experience of Brahman, cannot be explained because it cannot be put through words. Say the Vedas themselves, that it cannot, even if you read all the Vedas, you cannot understand Brahman. And the problem also cannot be explained. Maya is anirvachaniya. It is inexplicable. It cannot be explained. So there is a problem, serious problem in linguistics, a language problem. Neither the problem can be explained. It is not like mathematics where you can explain the problem, then you can say that this is how it has to be solved and this is the solution. So we know how it has to be solved, but we neither know the true nature of the problem, neither we know the true nature of the solution. What is the problem? Maya, Adhyasa, Vidya is the problem. What is the solution? Brahman. Can you explain Maya, Adhyasa, Vidya, Ajnana by words? No, you cannot. Shankaracharya says that you cannot say it is there. You cannot say it is not there. You cannot say it is there and not there. So it is anirvachaniya. In Viveka Chudamani, he says this. So it is difficult to explain. Also, Brahman is of course difficult to explain because it cannot be told, na tatra vak gacchati, etc. It cannot be told through words. So we are in a conundrum, in a problem where we experience the solution, we cannot explain it. We experience the problem, we cannot explain it. And we know the path, only that path can be explained, how to go about it, that can be explained. So there is an epistemological challenge here. There is a hermeneutical epistemological challenge here. And that challenge is being addressed by Shankaracharya. And then finally, here, Shankaracharya says that the only remedy to remove the ideas of I am the doer and I am the enjoyer, the ideas of ahankara, mamakara, to remove adhyasa, also called avidya or maya or ajnana, the only way is to understand Vedanta. To understand the meaning of Vedanta. Vedanta refers to all the Upanishads, which give the gist of the Vedas. So one meaning of Vedanta is the summary of the Vedas, the creme la de creme of Vedas. So the cream of the Vedas. How to explain what is contained in the Vedas in a gist form, in a summary form. That is what the Upanishads do. And they explain not only what is contained in the Vedas, they also explain our true nature. How to attain that, they explain that. Acknowledging the fact that it is not possible for any text to convey the true nature of the human person, the Vedas or the Vedanta Upanishads try to give us a solution. Now, before that, we have to understand that there are so many kinds of adhyasa. Shankaracharya almost always, when he is talking about adhyasa, makes it a point to stress or emphasize that the adhyasa or superimposition does not happen only in one direction. It happens in both directions. It's not unidirectional, it is bidirectional. It is bidirectional. Both directions adhyasa happens. Itara adhyasa. So the rope is superimposed on snake. Snake is also superimposed on rope. So this happens. Because suddenly you see a snake which is not moving at all. It is because you are seeing the snake on the rope. Rope is just lying there. So you also see a snake which is just lying like a python. Not all snakes are python, obviously. So you see a snake which is coiled up and lying like a python, not moving. So you have successfully superimposed some qualities of rope on snake. You also superimpose the qualities of snake on rope. Similarly, one superimposes the quality of consciousness on inert matter and the quality of matter on consciousness. Itara adhyasa. That is what one thing he says. But along with that, Shankaracharya also says that the superimposition happens not only of one object on the other object, but also of the properties of one object. Dharma, properties or characteristics or attributes of one object on the properties of other object. So it is two things are happening here. Wherever, in whatever location there is superimposition, there is something already there. On that, something else is superimposed. And what is being superimposed? Not only that object, but also the properties of the object are being superimposed. And this is the problem. So, superimposition of the properties of external objects is on Atman. Properties of external objects like one's relative, one's friend, one's son or one's spouse, one's children. Properties of external objects are superimposed on the self. Then superimposition of the properties of body. Sthuloham, all that. So one person is fat. So fatness, etc. That is superimposed. Superimposing the properties of body on the self. Then there is the superimposition of the properties of senses, sense organs. Somebody is deaf, somebody is dumb, etc. That is superimposed on the self. Then superimposition of the properties of antakarana. Antakarana means, you can roughly translate it as internal organ. Antakarana. Mind, ahankara, chitta, buddhi. So, superimposition like desire, kama, sankalpa, vichikitsa, doubt, etc. Which is superimposed on the self. And there is the superimposition of the body, the senses, the antakarana on the self, and the self is also being superimposed on the body and the senses and antakarana. Itara adhyasa. Now, so here we have to understand that the whole point in explaining so much about adhyasa is to bring home to us the fact that there is adhyasa. There is something very illogically happening all the time, which is very illogical, but it is happening all the time. And to get rid of it, what we have to do, we have to enter into a study of Vedanta. We have to understand the Upanishads properly to understand the way to get rid of adhyasa, to get rid of the idea that I am the doer, karta, or to get rid of the idea that I am the enjoyer, bhokta. If I get rid of these ideas, I get rid of adhyasa, then I get rid of sarva anartha hetuhu, the cause of or the reason for all problem. In Bengali, there is an expression which I am unable to translate into some other language, like English, Godai Gondugol. This is an expression. It's a very good expression. Godai means the root. There is Gondugol. Gondugol means there is some problem. There's some confusion. Some problem is there. Root of all problems. So the root of all problems is this adhyasa, this misery, this suffering. And to get rid of this suffering, one has to study Vedanta. One has to study Vedanta. And that is why this particular sutra is being begun. The first sutra we know is called Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now, that is why Shankaracharya has given such a big elaboration of Adhyasa or explanation of Adhyasa to prove the point that there is a need to understand the Vedanta or Upanishads, because they talk about a non-Adhyasa state. So we all know what has happened now. We are considering Anatma state to be Atma state. Atma in Sanskrit also means our own self with a smaller s. In Bhagavad Gita, you will see that the word Atma is used for mind. The word Atma is used for body. The word Atma is used also for prana. So Atma means relating to myself. If I consider myself to the body and mind, that is what most people consider. So now I am actually considering myself, which is not my true self. That is the not self state, Anatma state, to be Atma state. I am considering this is my state. And I am not even thinking of the Atma state. Why? Because it is very difficult to perceive or experience. You cannot experience Atman through the mind. You cannot experience Atman through the senses. You cannot experience them through the sense objects. You cannot experience Atman using the pramanas, six methods of knowing. It is not possible to experience Atman if you read the Vedas. Just by studying Vedas, you cannot experience the Atman. So because it is so difficult to experience the Atman, conveniently, most of us, we say, almost all of us, we say, Atman and all, we don't know. Only very few people are talking about this, and only fewer people are claiming that they have seen. And just like few people talk about some great things and they end up in a mental asylum. Similarly, these people are also supposed to be in mental asylum. Somehow government has not even now understood. And so these people call themselves Brahmagyani and they are outside. And also you see in Shastra itself, it is told Unmadavat. A knower of Brahman is like a mad person. They got it all correct. Really, a knower of Brahman is a mad person only. And so we should not break our heads. Let us have our own nice, whatever we are doing. It's all life is like this. And let us not waste our time in understanding Brahma Sutra. And that is why reasonably people have told Brahma Sutra, Baba, don't study because it is all complicated. Because it's not necessary to study. What is this all boiling your head? Whether this Upanishad tells this or that Upanishad tells that. Why we should study all this? Even otherwise in this Corona time, we have to do so many things, work from home, etc. Why should we study? That is the question. And that looks so just like Arjuna's logic in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It looks so convincing. Yes, it's correct, true. And that is why we have to understand that the state. And so when we say this, we are forgetting one thing. And what is that one thing? That in all our existence, there is one thing which is not changing, and that is suffering. And people who claim themselves to be Brahmagyanis, they also claim that they have gone beyond suffering. But that is not the claim of a person who is diagnosed as mentally ill. They are also suffering. So that way you know that a Brahmagyani is not mentally ill. Because that person, she or he is not suffering. Why not suffering? Because they have transcended suffering. So this suffering is something which is constant. And to get rid of this suffering, we have to understand our true nature. And that is why we have to study Vedanta. That is what is being told by Shankaracharya in the Adhyasa Bhashya. He explains Adhyasa, he defines Adhyasa 3 or 4 times. He defines Adhyasa, and all those times his thing is this. Why is he defining Adhyasa? To prove to us that this happens very normally. So when you say normal people like us, it means people who are ignorant. People normally who are generally, there is no general knowledge, like that generally people are ignorant. So that one has to understand. Oh, Ajnana state, this is what is happening. So that is what Shankaracharya wants to prove. Hereafter we will enter into the Bhashya, the commentary proper of Shankaracharya on the Brahma Sutra, starting with Jigyasa Adhikaranam, the first chapter, first sutra. So all these sutras, according to Shankaracharya's counting of sutras, there are 555 sutras, according to Shankaracharya. So many other commentators like Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, Vallabhacharya, etc., they have taken some more sentences or some more words and called them one sutra. Some people have broken sutras into several parts. So the numbering of sutra changes from one commentator to the other. Only Shankaracharya, he says that it is 555 sutras. So classified into various adhikarana. This classification of adhikarana also changes from commentator to commentator. But the fact that Brahma Sutra has got 4 chapters does not change. And every chapter has got 4 pada also, that also does not change. All commentators maintain the same thing. So here every chapter has got 4 pada. 1 pada means a quarter. So every chapter has got 4 quarters, and there are 4 padas for 4 chapters. So 16 padas are there and 4 chapters are there. And the first sutra is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. The word meaning will be like this. Atha, then. Atah, therefore. Brahma Jigyasa. Jnatum Ichcha Jigyasa. The desire to know is called Jigyasa. Just like the desire to drink, it's called Pipasa. The desire to eat is called Bhubuksha. The desire to live is called Jijivisha. Similarly, the desire to know is called Jigyasa. So Brahma Jigyasa. Atha, then. That means it supposes that there something has happened before that. And Atah, therefore. Because something has happened before that, therefore now we have to know Brahman. There is this desire to know Brahman. Not we have to, but there is this desire to know Brahman. Like that, it starts. And we will see Shankaracharya's Bhashya or commentary on this. The first 4 sutras of the Brahma Sutras, they are called Chatussutri. And it is believed that the first 4 sutras, they are representative of the 4 chapters of Brahma Sutras. So the first sutra is representative of the first chapter, second sutra of the second chapter, third of the third, and the fourth of the fourth. That is the traditional belief. And also it is traditionally believed that if you can understand the meaning and the purpose of the first 4 sutras, then you understand the meaning of the entire Brahma Sutra. That is why many people stop studying the Brahma Sutra after they have studied the Chatussutri, because they think that now not necessary. 4 sutras we have studied which are representative. That is also a way how Shankaracharya has presented it. And Chatussutri is also studied by other disciplines or other systems of thought other than Advaita Vedanta also. But Shankaracharya makes it very compact that in 4 sutra itself, he brings almost all the points he will be discussing in the other sutras. So, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Atha means then and or now, and Ataha, therefore, the Brahma Jigyasa, the desire to know Brahman. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Does anyone have any question?
Swamiji, I don't have a question as such, Kanchan here, but just wanted to ask that does Advaita Vedanta also take a stand about transformation? Maybe that doesn't depend on a time or a particular method. The moment if you see that you are Brahman and the moment you are able to see it, you are transformed. So in that way, can we interpret Athato Brahma Jigyasa, now, the moment you realize that you are a Brahma Gyani, investigate into it. Is that the way we can interpret it?
No, the point is that when you get knowledge, you don't get knowledge. You only lose ignorance. Because knowledge, if it were to be got, then it will perish. Anything that can be got will perish. So knowledge is not received. You don't get the knowledge of Brahman. You only lose the covering on the knowledge which always is there. Okay, so basically there is no transformation happening even when, that's what Shankaracharya says in Adhyasa Bhashya. Even when you are facing or you are experiencing unreality, or when you are facing Adhyasa, nothing is actually changing. Your true nature has never changed. So there is no transformation in you. You were always like that. Just like you wear spectacles and you forget that you have spectacles on your nose. So that does not mean that there were no spectacles. You were wearing spectacles. You have forgotten. Because you have been wearing spectacles for a long time now, you have forgotten that it is already on your nose. And you keep on searching the whole house that where are my spectacles. So similarly, you were never not self. You were always Atman. Even now, when you are not experiencing that you are Atman, even now you are Atman. Only thing you have forgotten that. So when you know that, actually we say like that, no Brahman, Brahma with Brahmaiva Bhavati. We say we know Brahman, but actually you don't know Brahman, you lose ignorance. You stop thinking that you are not Brahman. That's what happens. So there is no transformation to begin with. Because if there is a transformation, anything which transforms is perishable. So if Atman transforms, if there is a change, that means it will be perishable. Atman will become perishable. That will become illogical actually. So then body is also perishable, Atman is also perishable, then it is not a true reality. Was it helpful, Kanchan?
Yes, Swamiji.
There are some questions. Can you elaborate why Brahman cannot be told in words? Simple. Words are born in the mind. Mind is perishable. And if Brahman can be told in words, then Brahman also will be perishable. So Brahman cannot be told in mind. Hence proved. In mathematics like that, they will do now. Hence proved. Okay. So, is there any other question? Anyone has any question? Smriti, do you have any question?
No, Swamiji, not today.
Nobody has any questions, is it? Okay. Very good. Maya is neither existence nor non-existence. However, then, what is this? However, then Brahman to be seen through Maya alone. No. Brahman, I did not get this question actually. Can you please clarify this question? What is this question here?
Swamiji, Joshi here. Yeah. I wanted to know, then through Maya alone, the Brahman can be realized? Brahman to be realized through Maya alone, or?
No, Brahman cannot be realized through Maya. You have to transcend Maya to realize Brahman. You have to go beyond Maya to realize Brahman.
I agreed, Swamiji. If Maya exists, then only we can go beyond that.
Oh, you are saying that Maya does not exist.
If Maya is there, then, for example, through this body only we can realize Brahman or realize God.
Maya is not reality. It is just an apparent reality. Maya is not there. It seems it is there. There is a difference.
Okay.
So when you're traveling on a tar road in the afternoon, bright sun is there. In front of you in the tar road, you think there is water. But when you take your car near that, you see there is no water. But as long as you were experiencing water on the tar road, you did experience water, right? Yes. So there was an appearance of water.
Yes.
But was there really any water? No. Yeah. So that is Maya. That is why Swamiji says it's a statement of facts. When you see it, you see it. You cannot say you did not see it. But was it actually there? It was not there.
Okay.
Water was never there. So Maya is not, we don't realize Brahman through Maya. We just transcend Maya.
Okay.
And so we maybe use certain things in Maya. For example, Upanishads are also in the realm of Maya, in the world of Maya. But we study Upanishads to get rid of Ajnana. Like Sri Ramakrishna says, if you have to remove one thorn, you have to use another thorn.
No.
So this Maya is a thorn. Use another thorn also in Maya, which is Upanishads. From one thorn, remove another thorn. But we are not getting knowledge of Brahman, but we are just losing Ajnana.
Okay, sir.
Why do you translate Brahma Sutra as God formulas? This is an inane question she has asked just to attract audience, nothing else. Simple question, simple answer.
No, see, because Brahman is not translated as God now, most of the times.
Yeah, but most of the times people don't understand what is Brahman. So that is why most of the times, so formula also, sutra is not formula, not by a long shot. But when you say God formulas, people are like, what is this? Let me see. So that is the thing. See, this is also traditional. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Bengali, he said, what? Magur Macher Jol or Jyoti Meher Kol. Magur Mach means a very good kind of fish. And Jol means that curry. Okay. So that fish curry. Magur Mach, I have to see what Mach it is. Maitreji, do you know what is it called in English? Magur?
No, Swamiji.
So it is called walking catfish.
Catfish, yes.
What kind of name? Walking catfish. Anyway, it is not walking on force or something. But anyway, so that Magur Macher Jol. Jol means curry. Okay. So one Magur Macher curry and Jyoti Meher Kol means Jyoti Meher means young woman's lap. Like that he used to say. He used to walk on the streets and say like that. Then he will say, Bol Hari Bol. So Magur Macher Jol, Jyoti Meher Kol, Bol Hari Bol. So people will, when they hear this, oh, fish curry, lap of a woman, and then they will be attracted. Then it is a Bol Hari Bol, like that. So God formulas means what? Finally, only Brahma Sutra. That is a...
Maharaj, but God is also Saguna Brahmana.
Yeah, Brahman can also be called. No, God has this Judeo-Abrahamic implication. God, when we say God, it has got some kind of a Western thing. If you are in a... So, Kanchan, did it explain the thing?
Yeah.
Did it help you?
Yeah.
Okay. So, there is one, Pooja is asking, if you are in a conversation with someone who is animated, is it worthwhile to continue the same or drop it, as it does not lead anywhere and you suffer unnecessarily? If you are in a conversation with someone, oh, same thing she has copied 2 times. Now the point is, there is no question. Pooja ji, I don't find any question, because you have already understood that it is not worthwhile and it does not lead anywhere and you suffer unnecessarily. Pooja ji, are you there?
Yes, Swamiji, it's actually my daughter's laptop. So,
Oh, sorry. So it is not Pooja. What is your name?
Satya Prakash.
Satya Prakash ji. So already you have understood. Then why is there a problem? Because you already understood. So you don't need to stay in that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. But there is a problem. I will tell you. You see, the problem is in attachment. We understand. But there comes the problem of ahankara and mamakara. If a person who is totally unconnected to us talks animatedly, etc., we don't mind. We are maybe traveling in a bus, somebody shouts, we also shout back, and then we forget the whole incident. But then we return to our home and we say, you see what happened, today in bus, that person was shouting like that. I also gave him back like that. And then your spouse says, huh? Why are you shouting like that? You should not shout. You lose your calm like that. Then you feel disturbed because you expect a particular kind of response from your spouse. You expect a particular kind of response from your child. You expect a particular kind of response from your parent, from your friend. So there is attachment. And so there you get, and then you know that even if you talk and that person is already angry and there is going to be no solution at all, but still you cannot leave talking because you are now attached, you are entangled. And that is the problem. And that is why we unnecessarily suffer. We unnecessarily suffer because we are attached or entangled. So even though we know that it is useless, it is pointless to try to make my point. It is pointless to try to make my point, even though we know that, but we miss the point because of attachment. Because of attachment. That is why Duryodhana says, Janami dharmam, nacha me pravritim, janami adharmam, nacha me nivrittim. I know what is dharma, I am unable to practice it. I am unable to act like that. What is righteous, I know, but I am unable to do that. I know what is adharma, I am unable to refrain from that. Is there any other question? No question. No question whatsoever.
Swamiji, I have a question myself. Mahalakshmi, pranams.
Wow.
Are you able to hear me, Swamiji? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're very much audible, and it gives me great joy that Mahalakshmi herself has a question.
I just wanted to ask this. I have a dilemma a few days ago. Like, suppose we know certain things, we have to get certain things done in our life, which is very important. For example, the worldly things like, getting things off, some kind of a, suppose you have a house to sell or something like that, and you want to just wind up everything. In that process, we have to interact with the world, right? And then in that process, when we are doing, how do we look at it? As a tatastha, as an aspirant, I'm saying, matlab hum jab aspire hote hain for something higher, at the same time keeping that in mind, and at the same time, how do we negotiate and how not to get perturbed or seemingly get perturbed but not get attached within? How do we go about that? Can you please enlighten?
This is a often asked question, but the question, why does this question rise? This question rises because we want to not give up our attachment.
Okay.
Suppose I am aware that the universe is unreal. Okay. I am aware that my mind, body, prana, intellect and Anandamaya Kosha is unreal. If I am aware.
Okay.
You want a house to be sold.
Okay.
What should I do? I should find buyers for that house.
Hmm.
Now, what will I do? I will put word, or I will post this message in many websites are there where houses are sold. And I will also contact people who sell houses. I will let everybody know that the house is at sale, on sale. And I will wait for I will make a deadline and I will wait for the largest bidder, highest bidder. That is how I will do. And because when you say this, you have to remember that Ramakrishna Mission does a lot of such work. So it is not that we are simply giving jnana and we are not doing any work. You of course know that, but I'm just reminding you that. So this is how we work. And because we cannot, you see, in real estate, there is a lot of black money involved. Real estate people will say 60% you give black, 40% white, like that. So that Ramakrishna Mission cannot do. Yes. So what we do, we go to only people who are able to sell us completely white. For that, sometimes we employ some companies which are like agents. They will take care of whatever they have to do with the people, and they will make pakka all documents in white, because it cannot be done otherwise. We will not do that. So we find such brokers and then we engage in a conversation about the price. We try our best to get the largest, highest price. But real estate, as you know, is, because you gave the example, I am going by the example. Real estate, as you know, is a very tricky kind of sector where the prices go up and come down. Okay, it's very volatile. So we get whatever price at that time. And there comes the difference. Till this, maybe you and I am working the same manner. After that, what will happen? Suddenly it comes into your mind, oh, this price is maybe very less. I should go for a higher price. But what I would do, I am waiting for the deadline, and whatever price I get, I will simply, whatever highest price I will get, I will sell the property.
Yes.
Because there I'm not waiting for it increasing more, or it'll something more I will get, like that. Because I believe karmani eva adhikara te ma phaleshu kadachana.
Okay, I got the point, Swamiji. I'm not having any ambition of that way. What I mean to say is getting into this mundane activities and getting involved, and not with an ambition. Just I want to finish my liabilities for that has cast over me, and for some time, and I have to finish off that, for example. So for that, I'm saying I find a contradiction between myself, my inner self, when I meditate or do my japam according to my diksha, or when I contemplate on the eternal truth and whatever in my own way as God directs me. I am very happy and contented. But when I just come out of that particular shell and I have to interact with the world, it helps me sometimes. And sometimes I find myself in a very juxtaposed position where I find that all these things has to get over as soon as possible. And I just can't just get out of that also, because it is I am answerable to certain people. I have to pay back the money to my own people at home. Then I would be free from all the things. At least
I understood your problem. The problem is, you see, in her introduction to the complete verse of Swami Vivekananda, Sister Nivedita says, from now on, to hold is as stern a quest as to quit. So your problem now is the problem of ego, ahankara, sense of ego. So everybody is a great person when they are left to themselves. Only when they interact with other people, their true nature comes out. Okay.
I don't want to keep up those things. No, I have to give back to them.
No. Please try to understand what I'm telling. What I'm telling is, if we have the clear idea that whatever happens in this world is unreal, it is not affecting me, then even if you deal with people who are maybe outright ruffians, it should not affect you.
Okay, God. I shouldn't get affected by that. Do it. Yuddha जो करना करते रहो, but उससे affect मत होना, यही ना?
Because it is not affecting you anyway. Because you are not the body and the mind, so nothing will affect you.
Okay.
So whatever you have to do, you do. Because you see in Mahabharata, which Swami Vivekananda quotes in Karma Yoga, one of the Brahmagyanis is a butcher, Vyadha. So butcher is not giving, he's not closing shop, he's not closing his butcher shop. He is not saying, no, I have got Brahmagyana, I will not cut goat anymore. He is cutting everything left and right, nicely slicing, etc. Whatever he is doing, he is doing. And he is also giving that instruction to other people, Vyadha Gita. So the point is, if you really understand that this world is unreal, then what does it matter? Why are we getting worked up? So when you are sitting with your eyes closed and you are meditating, you are very calm. But the moment you have to enter into some kind of a human interaction, you feel disturbed, means there is some problem. That means you are not really convinced about the unreality of the world.
Okay. How to get convinced of the unreality?
Constantly thinking, constantly. Holy Mother says, constantly keep on think. Alochana. She uses this Bengali word, alochana. Constantly think. And by thinking, suddenly you will get she uses, Holy Mother Sarada Devi, she uses this word Tattva Bodha. You will get this Tattva Bodh, the knowledge of the reality.
Not in flashes.
On one hand, you have to do this. On the other hand, you have to give up desires. Because the same Holy Mother says, Nirvasana is Mukti. What is liberation? It is Nirvasana, being desireless. So why do we have desire? Because we want to win. You know, every being, we have this inherent urge, inherent desire to win, to establish ourselves, to be successful. So if you as long as you have that, it will be problematic.
And Swamiji, when we see something right or wrong, is that the way? What is that? That wo jo ek aa jata hai ki this is right, this is not right, that is wrong. Aisa kyun ho raha? Why he is doing? Or aisa kyun ho raha? You know, it's kind of system when we see either at home or in an institution or wherever we go. Suppose we see, how do we tackle that kind of an feeling of?
There are two dimensions to this problem. There are two dimensions, two aspects to this problem. The first aspect, a more psychological aspect, is you are seeing probably that problem because you also have that problem.
Okay.
So every time one has to do serious soul searching.
Okay.
If you see somebody being jealous and you feel, oh, that person should not be jealous, that means probably you also are jealous sometime. So that is one aspect. Second aspect is, if you think that person has to change, why do you want to change the other person? Is that person, you see, take the case of Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna is giving Arjuna the instruction through Bhagavad Gita. In the beginning, he does not say that you have to change, etc. or whatever. He says what you are talking does not make sense because you are not the body, you are not the mind. So, if you go at that level, what you see in the other person is at what level? Body and the mind. So, is body permanent? No, it is not. Is mind permanent? No, it is not. That is why you see the concept of Swadharma is a saving grace. Is it your Swadharma to correct that person?
Okay.
Are you given the responsibility of correcting that person? Ask this question.
Okay.
So if, for example, you are a citizen and you see that the person who has taken your vote and become a representative of people is not properly doing her or his duty. This, when you sense this, there comes two aspects to this. First, are you doing your duties properly? That question you have to ask. Are you able to do them properly? If you think you are doing your duties properly, just thinking will not do. That has to be a serious and a very brutally, you have to cross-question yourself. And the second thing is, if you think you are doing your duties properly, then go to the next step. Because you are a citizen, yes, it is your duty to question the person who represents the people. So MLA, MP, or whoever, a counselor, whoever it is. You go to that person and say that, see, this is what you have to do. Not like that. You put it in a different way. This is what is supposed to be done, and it is not done. But when you enter into such kind of a exercise, you will understand, suddenly you understand that most of the times you want to do something which you consider your duty. For example, in this case, MLA or MP, you want to go and ask to set right something which had to be set right. It is not because you are suddenly become the unselfish advocate of people's rights, etc. But because you want to prove to the world that you are something. If that is the reason why you are doing, then you should not do that. So again, always we should question, what is it? Why am I doing this?
What is driving me? That's what.
What exactly? What is driving you? Why are you doing this? So, or how will you deal if that goes wrong?
That's
so. If you put all your efforts and still no result comes, what will happen to you? Will you be shattered? That means you have entangled yourself with the problem. That is how. So constantly we have to think that this should not be something where my interest lies. You see, it is very easy to give up money. It is very easy to give up power, etc. It is very, very difficult to give up fame. The need to be popular, the need to be liked by everybody. That's why it is said, no, fame is the last infirmity of a perfect soul. So it's very difficult. Even great souls cannot give up that. So always this question should come. Am I wanting to be popular? Am I wanting to be in the good books of everybody? If you think that you have to be in the good books of everybody, both Shankaracharya and afterwards, much later, Swami Yatishwaranandaji, they say that that means there is something seriously wrong with you, because nobody can be in the good books of everybody.
Everybody.
So
that
this
is, we have to
be
always be introspective about what is driving me. That is the thing, what I got it.
Yeah. And if the world is unreal, so okay, you go to a particular, suppose you are doing, construction activity. There are different levels of workers involved in that construction activity. There are architects. You cannot go and shout to the architects. They understand a different language. They understand a different way of expression. At the same time, people who come as daily laborers and all that, there you go and say, please do this. They will not understand that. You have to tell them in the language they understand. That's a practical aspect of the problem. But if you tell it and you don't feel any tension or stress, that means you're doing it right. That is Karma Yoga.
But that is, we have to have a fair introspection and a logical introspection, an objective introspection of our own activities. If we are very sincere and keen, ardent for seekers of, as a seeker of truth. That's what I gather from what you've said.
And there should be no motive. Our goal should be to make it as selfless, as unselfish as possible.
Okay. Because each person carries a vritti with him or her from childhood. So like I have a vritti from childhood of seeing the right and wrong in me. So from school time, I was not able to take care of, this kind of teachers having partiality, or even at home, even if it was my brother or my grandma or whatever, where it was something wrong, I used to stand upright. So the same thing follows wherever I go, and I fall into a lot of problems because of that. So I thought this vritti itself, why it cannot be squashed, and is it an encumbrance in the path of spirituality? Because after all, even vritti ko transcend karna padega na.
No, that is of course an encumbrance in the path of spirituality, an obstacle in the path of spirituality. And the way to get rid of it is not by concentrating on it. See, in his inspired talks, Swamiji tells a very wonderful thing. He says, there is nothing called righteous indignation. He says, we usually have this idea, yes, I was angry and that is correct. I was angry for a correct cause. So Swamiji says there is nothing called righteous indignation. Means if you are indignant or you are angry, it is wrong. No matter whatever triggered your anger. You cannot say that, yes, my anger was justified. Anger itself
cannot justify your anger. Lovely.
No, anger itself is unjustified. Any form
sir,
of
yeah.
anger for whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So similarly, if you see that something right or wrong is happening,
Okay.
already you are seeing some difference there.
Hmm.
Because there are so many rights, there are so many wrongs. Why are you seeing a right and wrong? And if you see that, you are seeing it only in the realm of ajnana. So go and tell. As long as you see, suppose you are walking on the road, you find a young man going and trying to tease or disturb the young woman going there. Of course, you should go and interfere. Of course, you should ask. But the goal is not to become some hero or something.
Yes.
Just you are seeing something and you go and ask, that's all. And there, if you are also getting some beating, also okay. That is your prarabdha. That's why in Shankaracharya's Manisha Panchakam, he will say, prarabdhaya samarpitam sva vapuhu. One surrenders, there is an Advaitic surrender also. And that is this. You surrender your body, vapuhu, to prarabdha. Prarabdha karma. So because you said you have this vritti, you surrender it to that prarabdha karma, your body and mind. So when you see something wrong, you feel that you have to ask question, go and ask question. Only remove the idea of selfishness from there. Remove the idea that I am asking question. You know, I did this. Remove that from there. Then the equation.
That is not there. That is not there. I don't feel I am asking. I can't, but keep quiet.
Yeah, that means that is there. If you cannot do the otherwise, that means of course there is an entanglement.
No, but I keep quiet for some time, but then it becomes too much, then I'll have to interfere.
So that is a problem. That means there is a problem. You might not verbally putting it in that manner that I have asked, but there is a problem there. Of course there is a problem. So what you have to do first is, if you see that, approach the problem as impartially as possible. Swamiji uses another one phrase, impersonally personal.
Okay.
Impersonally personal. You have nothing there, but see, for that woman, your intervention will be very personal for her. Oh, you came and saved me, etc. But you should just, if you saw this, your prarabdha was that you have to see, and you saw, and immediately you intervened. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
But then don't try to be a hero there.
No. Okay. Got it.
So it is a tricky thing. It's very difficult. Only by practice you understand that. 2-3 times you get huge blows, then you understand what you have to do.
Okay, Swamiji. I have some more doubts. Can I send a mail to you?
Yeah. Please.
Okay. Or WhatsApp?
Yeah, WhatsApp also. No, mail you can send. Mail is best.
I don't have your mail ID.
Oh, WhatsApp you have. No, WhatsApp. So WhatsApp you send.
Okay. Okay, Swamiji. Pranams once again.
Namaste. Okay, so we can end it here. Shubharatri. Namaste.